What am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone.
I don't understand.
Because there was a dead man on the other end of this fucking line.
Erotic thrillers, now playing The Handmaiden, Fatal Attraction, Eyes Wide Shut. I do love you. And you know, there is something very important we need to do as soon as possible. What's that? Pod. Welcome to Corona Cinema. I'm Leon Way, and we got Ross.
Hello.
Matty.
Good afternoon.
And here's Mason.
Hello, you alright?
And we're starting with Mason's pick, The Handmaiden from 2016. A woman is hired as a handmaiden to a Japanese heiress, but secretly she is involved in a plot to defraud her. Directed by Chan Wook Park, who co-wrote the screenplay with Seo Kyung Jong, starring Min Hee Kim, Tyree Kim, and Jung Woon Ha. Definitely butchered that. And it won the BAFTA for Best Film, not in the English language, which is still a fucking stupid name for an award. Mason, why'd you pick this film?
So when we decided the category for this week, I didn't know any erotic thrillers, so it was it was basically one of the most like modern ones that came up on Google when I searched for it. And to be honest, I had no idea what to expect when I was watching the film. I literally knew nothing about it, and I think what made me enjoy it the most was the way that after every like part of the film, like the three parts it's split up into, it feels like a totally different experience each time, and it's like you kind of get to experience the film from a different perspective. So like when you watch the first part of the film, you're sort of led to believe that Lady Hideko is she's so oblivious to the entire situation, and she's just kind of getting like used. And that's when I really got like Parasite vibes from the film at that point. So I was like, oh shame, like this is the path that the film's going down. Then obviously you switch like part two, where you get like the knowledge that obviously she's in on the plan herself, and it's actually the handmaiden who's getting fucked over. And I think at first I was like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna work, but it was a real like strong point for me watching the film, because like getting like more information in these three big chunks, but then also learning more, like particularly about Lady Hideko, like her sort of past and everything like that. I think it really helps you appreciate the parts that you've watched before, but then equally like build up to like this overall enjoyable experience to watch, really. Yeah, other than that, I thought I really enjoyed sort of like the twists, and everything about the film just sort of seemed to work for me, especially considering it's a film I knew like absolutely nothing about going into.
Yeah, I thought having the three parts, like having that structure with the three parts, worked really nicely. Like it all comes together, allows you to revisit scenes like with a different perspective, knowing like the twists and the different character motivations. I like that whenever that happens in a film, where you think you're watching one thing and then you have a twist and you go back and see the scene from like a different point of view. It like it adds another layer to it. Matt, is that something you enjoyed about the film, having that different perspective from for the characters?
Yeah, definitely. Not only does it like change your perspective on the scenes that have like just happened, it adds in extra parts to those scenes, so it also builds on them as well, which I quite like. I think when I was watching it, it felt like a Tarantino film. Like, I don't know why, but like the main thing that it reminded me was of The Hateful Eight, the way it showed you a whole scene, a premise, and then it went back before that with a whole nother chapter and showed you how that was different to what you assumed, and then it skipped to the last chapter after like the final chapter, and then it shows you then how all of this plays out. But the film itself doesn't feel like an erotic thriller. I think it just more feels like I think it fit better in when we did Pride Week or Pride Month. That's what I feel like the film worked better on, because I didn't realize it was going to go down that lane when I first watched the film. And then I thought that she was just using her as well when they showed us the second part of the film. So then, as Mason said, I do like the stip stat going back and forward, kind of the twists that the film goes through. And I'm still not I'm not sure what I think of the lead lady, whether not the handmaiden, but the lead lady, whether she was actually, I don't know. I just got bad vibes. She's tricksy. It was weird. But yeah, I don't really have too much to say about these films because I watched this one last of the three, and all three of these films just kind of bamboozled me. Like, I just sat there like with my mouth open, I was just such a weird kind of like premise for films because they're not particularly comfortable films to watch. But I felt this was the most kind of enjoyable. It was the best put together of the three. Cinematically, it was really well thought out, and all the camera angles worked really well. The way they led the scenes and use of mirrors in some of the scenes worked really well. And yeah, I think I enjoyed this one the most. It just didn't give me an overriding sense of like stress like the other two did, which is what the other two were trying to do. But no, yeah, I definitely enjoyed this film the most.
I've seen two other films by this director. Matt, you've seen Old Boy as well, I think. I've seen Old Boy and Lady Vengeance, which is part of his like trilogy of vengeance films. But even though this is not a part of that, I still think I should have expected some of the twists because he's not a very subtle filmmaker. It's very, if you watch Old Boy, you know that. They're very bombastic, very explicit in the way he does his films. So I don't know, I don't know, for some reason I still wasn't expecting the twist to come or anything to happen out of the ordinary based on watching that first chapter. Like, I like that first chapter and some of the stuff in it, like the scene where she like smoothens her tooth and other things, like where she compliments her beauty in the mirror, and there's like one shot with like the back of their heads when they look identical, like little things like that hinting at like a connection between them. Some of that stuff was good. Then when they kind of leave the house and you have like the marriage kind of montage kind of thing, and then all the scenes kind of like the transition between the scenes in that bit, it's like fade to black for each of the transitions, which hadn't happened before. I thought like at that point it was like a bit weird. I wasn't sure where the film was going, and then when you get like the twist that was just out of nowhere, that's when it kind of kicks back into gear for me. And even in the second chapter as well, when it started with when she's doing those like sex readings, which is really weird. I don't know if that was actually like a cultural thing going on back then, where she basically like the porn back then was a woman reading erotic readings. Like, yeah, it was a bit weird. Even that bit like dragged again a bit for me. Then it kicked into gear again, and you started revealing different motivations and things, and that's when it got really good. But Ross, did it drag for you in any parts of where you gripped the whole way through?
I don't think so. It didn't drag on any part too much. I mean, it did. I suppose it did a little bit before kind of the twist, but I think when these twists do happen, it kind of kicks you back into action. And I think the first part, because you watch it for the first hour, and it's just about their relationship, and I thought it's just going to be a film about like their relationship, or what was going to happen and whatnot. But yeah, you just feel like you've been like tricked when you find out what her actual motivation was, and I think that kind of brings you back into the film, and then you find it's really interesting to find out about her past. I think, yeah, maybe that bit was dragged out a little too much as well. But then when it comes back to present time and you find out that she was actually tricking Count as well, it's yeah, it keeps you interested on the most part anyway. So I really enjoyed it. And you got to credit the actors there for like seamlessly switching between Korean and Japanese. Like, they make that look so easy. It's actually ridiculous how they just managed to do that so easily.
I really like the touch in so when the Count sends a letter to Hideko, basically explaining how they're gonna screw over Suki, the maid. She literally because she can't read, and that's when she has to pretend that she can read, and she's reading out the instructions to Hideko. But literally in that letter, if she could read, it has all the details of how at that point they were planning to screw her over. So I thought that was like a nice, entertaining touch. And I think it's interesting. Like, we did Portrait of a Lady on Fire a few weeks ago, like Matt said, on the LGBTQ plus week, and that was where like two women were being influenced by men, and there wasn't even a man really in the film, but the whole reason they were there, everything they were doing in life was dictated to by men. This one is literally two women being like pitted against each other by a man, and they're able to like overcome that and then come together. So Mason, was that like a strong theme that you felt in the film, like their like unity that they were able to show against this guy who's trying to split them apart?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have like two guys like trying to split them apart, like individually as well. Like you have her uncle, I think it is, who from a young age was just basically like deemed that, I think, is it like he's gonna marry her or something? I can't remember, to be honest. But it's all just like a bit fucked up, and he's like ensuring that like no one's gonna get with her. And then you've got the Count, is it? He's obviously stopping the Handmaiden, and he's like trying to like convince her, no, you're not allowed to do this, blah blah, blah, and stuff like that. And like you say, comparing it to like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, with this you have got these really like dominating figures, like male figures, that are trying to ensure that it doesn't happen. And yet that's what I think. It's quite a nice like wholesome, it's quite a nice wholesome feeling at the end, really, because when they do get together, you feel like you've gone through that sort of progressive journey with them as well, to where it's deserving for them to be together by the end, because you watch the amount of shit that, I guess, more so Lady Hideko is going through compared to the Handmaiden, but you get to see, like, especially when you see like their past and stuff, you get to understand that they do deserve this kind of like piece of happiness at the end. And it's sort of like what Matty said. You know how he said this felt like very different from the rest, like the other two films we watched? I think it's because, I mean, personally, like, when I thought of like erotic thrillers, it isn't any modern films that sort of hit that category. It is more films from like the 90s, at most maybe like probably like the 80s, maybe like early 2000s. And I feel like this is sort of like a modern take on what you would get from an erotic thriller, and I think that's why it works so well, because it almost seems too smart to be an erotic thriller, because I feel like, especially like when you watch like the films we've seen this week, that it's like very blatant that it's just like this sort of psycho and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know, I feel like this film works well with kind of reviving that genre into like bringing it back into like the modern day.
Yeah, I don't think you really get erotic thrillers anymore. It's kind of like too explicit in this day and age. They're not really making them. You definitely wouldn't get like Fatal Attraction is probably the most like the epitome of your erotic thriller, and you're not going to get anything like that in this day and age. But in keeping with the idea of kind of like feminism, those kind of themes within this film, like you have the quote from the Count when he's like, "Women feel the greatest pleasure by force," which is, as well as being an uncomfortable thing and misogynistic thing for someone to say, that's kind of like indicative of what like they're trying to say within the film, because you have that from a man's perspective, whereas you get the lesbian sex scene, like the first time they have sex, and they're literally holding hands in unison as they're doing it and reciprocating each sex act. And then like the closing sex scene when they're on the boat and they're going to forge a new life for themselves, like it's literally like symmetrical on that ship when they're doing this. When they do the sex scene, everything is just completely balanced to show how they're on an equal playing field. But in terms of the sex, the only thing is, like, I feel like it might be like a bit gratuitous, like, and it's also a bit uncomfortable knowing it's a male director, a male, like the director of photography, or it's a female screenwriter, or she like co-screenwriter. Like it kind of, as times you're like sitting there watching it as this goes on for like 4 or 5 minutes, and it's like, is this just like a male fantasy of lesbianism rather than what's actually going on? And then at that point, like, it's a bit scummy at that point. But at the same time, I don't know. Like, I don't actually have an idea of what it is like. So like, maybe you're not really in the best position, like most qualified to say that. But it does feel like it might be a bit gratuitous. Matty, is that something that you think? That's a accusation you often get with like Tarantino and other directors about using violence, and that not being like using violence excessively. But do you think the sexual imagery in this film was perhaps a bit excessive?
I think for violence, that argument, like, I think it's a lot easier to get away putting an excessive violence scene in a film than it is to put an excessive sex scene in a film. And yeah, it's interesting because I don't really. A lot of films, like the art of filmmaking, is like alluding to what would happen. So at the point when it does happen, then the doors usually close and you don't see anything. But because of everything that's built up towards it and everything that symbolizes what they're about to do is so important, you kind of get everything you need. Like the filmmaker's already done everything he needs to do for that act to have this, like the symbolism and the metaphor that it needs to have, and then the film can carry on without worrying about it turning into like a high quality like low nudity porno, basically. And that's kind of like what some of these films feel like, when they kind of just like let the scenes drag on a little longer than's comfortable. And then you're thinking, okay, why am I watching this? Is it because I'm looking at the intimate relationship between these two characters? Because ultimately you can get more intimacy from even just like when they kissed and then she just touched her face to show that how much he loved her, but she couldn't like reciprocate at the moment. Like you got more from that scene than you did from the whole sex scene anyway. And it kind of felt like at the end, when they had the final sex scene, it just felt like the end of, in Sausage Party, where they go, right, this is what the whole film has been building up to. Let's just like have at it, and then everyone just goes for it. If that makes any sense, it's like, oh yeah, this is what we've been waiting for the whole film, and it just feels like it's not really needed. They could have ended it right at the boat scene when they were just leaving, and they threw the wedding ring away and the mustache and the gloves, like the last symbols that dude had any influence on their life, and they could have just ended it there, because every male counterproductive and just controlling aspect had already gone. Like I quite like the ending where the dude used the mercury cigarettes and then killed both the uncle and himself. So that ties everything up quite nicely. So they're going to be okay. And I just felt that last scene just wasn't needed, especially because they already had a sex scene. And if they were looking just like they put a sex scene in just to tick some boxes so they get some more viewers and they get to put something in the trailer so people will actually watch the film, so they try and get to that kind of like audience that the message of the story isn't enough. But then they put another one in anyway. So you do kind of question the motives behind putting such a forthright scene in the film. But maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm just, I don't know.
Didn't expect a Sausage Party to come up on this podcast. Anything else?
We had it the other week with a Portrait of a Lady on Fire, where it's this ridiculous rule in the Oscars where only like one foreign country is allowed to be nominated for a film. I don't know whether this would have been nominated or anything, but it's a very good film, and I haven't seen the other film. I can't remember what other film Korea put ahead that year for the Oscars, but this rule of one like film per foreign country is actually ridiculous, and it needs to change, because films like this should be up there with some of like the best ones of that year, I think. But yeah, they just need to sort that out.
At least BAFTA recognised it. Okay, let's get some ratings. Mason?
I really enjoyed it, and it was a lot better than what I was expecting. So I gave it an 8.
Matty?
Yeah, really well crafted and thought out film. You can definitely see like they're not an idiot whoever wrote this. Like they're actually working towards and then building you up to things and then changing your perspectives. So I gave it an 8.3.
Ross?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's so just twisty and curvy, the whole film. Yeah, I gave it an 8.3 as well.
Wow. I also gave it an 8.3. And moving on to Matty's pick, Fatal Attraction from 1987. A married man's one-night stand comes back to haunt him when that lover begins to stalk him and his family. Directed by Adrian Lyne and written by James Dearden, starring Glenn Close, Michael Douglas, and Anne Archer. Oscar nominated for its direction, writing, editing, Best Actress for Close, Supporting Actress for Archer, and Best Picture, but it won none. Matty, why'd you pick this film?
Well, I thought I hadn't seen this film, but I knew it was quite famous, like for being like the epitome of like erotic thrillers. And it turns out I've actually seen the ending. I've seen the last half hour of this film before, but I couldn't quite remember the order it happened. So it was I wouldn't say a nice rewatch, but it was a refreshing rewatch that kind of filled me full of anxiety and dread. And we've often talked about films that would probably prevent me from getting married just through trust issues. And I think I finally completed the trilogy with Ex Machina, Gone Girl, and now Fatal Attraction. I think these three, if you watch them close enough together, induce you with enough anxiety that I don't think you'll trust any woman ever again, to be fair. But it actually surprised me with this film. Like I knew Michael Douglas was like a relatively well-known actor, and he's supposedly quite good in his time. But I've obviously only seen him in things like Ant-Man, like most recently. That's like the most recent thing I've seen him in, and he doesn't get much scope in that anyway. So when I was watching him in this, it was actually surprising to me how well acted he was, especially with his wife and oh, what was her name? It's gone. Glenn Close as well, mate. God, she's crazy. She's an excellent actor. And yeah, the whole film I'm on edge, and it's not really an erotic thriller. Like, it's an erotic thriller for like 20 minutes, and then it's just complete stress and anxiety. Because as soon as she starts to go a little bit crazy, and then yeah, I just stopped enjoying the film and just like I was just begging him to kill her the whole way through. So it kind of changed my mindset a little bit, which is a little bit scary. But one of the scenes that really resonated was just a table talk when he has the couple over for dinner. It's just so natural, and like the rapport he builds with like his co-stars, and there's nothing to like suggest that it's completely out of your mind that he's an actor. He is his character, and it just works beautifully. And the same goes for Glenn Close. Like, she is, I'd be terrified if I was in the same room with her, even if she wasn't acting. Like, it works brilliantly. There's a few little pet peeves that I have. Like, his daughter, yeah, I thought was a boy until like the last. Like, I had to Google it afterwards, and I was like, it's just not a girl. But I don't know. Maybe it's just the times. And also that dog, that Labrador, bloody useless as a guard dog. I can't. Like, the woman managed to sneak into the house with a knife, and the dog's just sat there licking like the water off the floor from the bath that's overflowing. And I swear Michael Douglas looks at the water dripping down from the ceiling and then goes and makes a coffee. But yeah, I don't know. The film really stands the test of time. And I think the only film that I didn't really enjoy the sex scene, but what I really enjoyed was her getting shot in the chest, which is quite strange, and her getting waterboarded. They were like the most fulfilling moments in the film for me, which I think just shows like how well the film works to make me hate this character so much. And that I just really enjoyed watching her getting killed, which I don't know. I think I'm learning a lot about myself watching this film. So I probably wouldn't watch it again. And then the last thing I'd say, I don't really understand Michael Douglas for cheating on his wife. Like I don't know, Glenn Close in this film, like, she looks a bit gaunt. I don't know what they did to her, but she definitely looks like she's been on meth for a while. And I don't really find Michael Douglas's actions relatable. But other than that, yeah, it's a horrible film, and yeah, rate quite highly.
It's saying that he wouldn't cheat on her just because the woman he cheated on isn't more attractive than his wife is like a bit disingenuous, because like I feel like men just do that all the time. Realistically, like, men are trash. So I think that's where it's like, I think it's not like an issue for me, because definitely it's happened bare times. You've even seen with celebrities who've cheated on their wife with somebody who's nowhere near as impressive as their actual wife. So yeah. Huh?
But usually with films like this, they'd show like a hint that the relationship that Michael Douglas was having with his wife was just a bit like not quite meeting everything that he or she wanted, to make him look like I'm going to look elsewhere. But there was no like hint of an upset marriage. That was the only thing. I think if they added something like that in, then it might have been a bit more believable that Michael Douglas would just so freely just cheat on his wife, because he really didn't seem to have any kind of doubt or just shame about it until the repercussions started to happen. But then, as you say, yeah, maybe that's just men, I guess. Who knows?
Yeah, even then, I feel like it's just like he thought my wife and kid are away. He's kind of like, obviously it's a happy marriage, but it's still like a chance to have a bit of fun for one night, and he thought there'd be no consequences. So it's like, yeah, why not? I can get away with it. It's kind of like, yeah, certain guys might be doing that. And the thing I like as well is how Glenn Close took this role because she wanted to prove that she could be sexy in a film. Like, she wasn't getting cast in these parts in the 80s what other actresses were, even though she was one of the best actresses at that time. And so that's why she took on the role. She had to spend a lot of time convincing the studio that she'd be able to pull it off. And I think, although obviously she's not as conventionally attractive as his actual wife, like, I think it works because of how like energetic she is, and her like physicality. Like, she constantly just pulling him in. Like, no, come on, let's, like, the way she talks is very like quite seductive. And when he wants to leave, like after they go salsa dancing, and then he's like, okay, should I get a cab? No, she just pulls him in. Like, just the physicality of her performance like kind of convinces you that she could be like irrepressible to him. And just this whole genre, like this was the big time of like the ... from hell formula in films, whether that be the nanny from hell in Hand That Rocks the Cradle, the boyfriend from hell in Fear with Mark Wahlberg. This is like the one night stand from hell. And I kind of just think it's like almost guaranteed to produce an entertaining movie when you have that formula. It might not necessarily always be good or like the best film, like a best picture nominee, like this one, but just having someone, you get entangled with someone, and then they end up stalking you. They have some kind of psychological issue and they end up stalking you and threatening your family. I think it's just proven just to produce an entertaining movie no matter what. And I think what's unique to this one is the amount of like crazy things that she actually does. Usually it's like it builds up a bit and then she'll do like a few things that has you alarmed. She does so many crazy things, like pouring the acid on his car, kidnapping his kid, burning the bunny. I was like going to when they're trying to sell their house, she goes to the house to meet his wife. That's when it got like really real. Like when the camera comes in and he's just slowly walking around the corner, it's like, fuck, she's been threatening to invade my family life and now she's properly invaded it. That's when like shit kind of got real. So yeah, she does a lot of crazy stuff throughout. So that's something you can relate to, Mason, just this genre of someone being the worst, like having a one night stand and this person being the worst possible version of that and coming after you. That's something you find thrilling in a film.
No, yeah, 100%. I think like that's what's really effective in the film is that although she is totally crazy, it is believable. And like I feel like you hear stories of people when they say that they have like psycho exes and stuff, and you're just like, can't be that bad. But then like I feel like you watch a film like this, and I feel like if you've ever experienced someone who is a bit psycho, when you like watch this film, you can understand. Yeah, I feel like you can almost understand Glenn Close's like obviously you don't understand, but you can sort of see why she's doing what she's doing because she is so crazy. And like she even says, like after knowing him for like 2 days, she's like, I love you. And he's like, what? You don't even know me. And you can see like that obsessive nature within her. And I think the film just does such a good job at portraying that there are people out there like that. Like obviously Glenn Close is like an extreme version who takes it to the next level. They said fucking like boiling like that kid's bunny. Like it's a bit mad. But I think on like a sort of scaled down version, I feel like people do experience obsessive characters who do show just slight signs of that. And I think I don't know, I think the film just does a really good job at, like I said, at portraying that like niche within society, really.
The problem I have with it is, and this probably wasn't even like thought about back then, but now because everyone's like more educated on things, like watching it now, because like she's not really like fully developed as a character in terms of like why or like how her mental health like deteriorated, and like you don't really see much of what she is outside of just this like relationship with Michael Douglas. Like you don't see what her like character is really like. You know, she had like a job, which she kind of like she never goes back to her job, it seems like, for the rest of the film. Like she was a book editor or whatever. So like not having that extra like background to the character makes like the switch when she just slits her wrists. Like it like rings kind of like, it feels like you're in a movie basically. That doesn't feel like authentic. And this is more like, the bigger problem is like the screenwriter even said like she's not actually ill, she's just lonely, and that's why she ends up lashing out like this. And that's where you kind of feel like kind of it's like a kind of archaic, like the gender politics then, because like, oh, she's a single woman with a career, so you've got a career rather than having a family, so therefore she must be like disturbed in some kind of way, and she end up being this like psychotic. Ross, is that something you feel kind of stands out as being a bit not really standing up to the test of time, that she's just crazy for no particular reason really?
Yeah, there's no actual like development to her character. She's just like a weird psychopath woman, and that's it. And there's an alternative ending to the film as well, where she slits her throat and kills herself with the knife that he held. So it has his fingerprints on the knife, and he ends up going to prison. And like you get that, which was obviously one of the endings that they could have used. or like her trying to kill his wife, and then the writers say, "Oh, but she's not disturbed or anything. She's just like, it doesn't make any sense. Like there's literally no, even to Michael Douglas's character as well. There's not really a real depth to the character or anyone in the film. He's just kind of like, it's just kind of put at the start. He's like a married man with like a perfect family, and that's it. There's no like, so you don't really feel that sorry for him because he's just a man with a wife who cheats on her. That's all you really know about him. So even throughout the film, you just don't really feel sorry for his character at all, and you don't. It's like, yeah. So yeah, that's one problem. The film's still entertaining. Like I'll still watch it, like, and enjoy it, because for some reason it's just kind of it's the way it works. It's just a film about a psychopath taunting this man, but there's no real other depth to it and no other layers to the film than that. But yeah, I suppose if they were to do this film again in 2020, they probably would add some kind of layers to the characters.
Yeah, the original ending was what Glenn Close like really pushed for, that she held off for weeks trying to keep the original ending. So it's like, yeah, she kills herself, and then because he touched a knife, because you know that scene where he goes around and he kind of like beats her up, threatens to strangle her, and then touches a knife because she tries to stab him. So the fingerprints are on the knife. So yeah, like he's probably going to prison. Then the wife finds that tape, the play me Alex, that she gives to him, and then that's where she's like, yeah, I'm going to kill myself. They're kind of basically saying I'm going to kill myself. So then the indication is that he's going to get let off by the police. You don't actually see that in the original ending, but yeah. So she fought half of the ending because the character like really resonated with her. Don't know what that says about her, but like she felt really like connected to the character in terms of like her struggle. Obviously not being a fucking psycho murderer, but in terms of her like mental struggle, she really connected to the character. So she thought it made more sense for her to take her own life rather than just being this like rampaging murderer right to the very end. But think about what Matty said about like, yeah, he really wanted her to be killed, and it was like a release. It felt good when she was killed, which is how like you would just feel watching the film, because she's attacking this guy, even though she's attacking this guy's family. Just get her out of the picture. She's a fucking psycho. You want her to be killed, which is why they needed to have that in the film. Because definitely if they used the original ending, it would have been less successful. Because the audience, you're watching a film where she's terrorizing this family, you want to have that satisfying feeling at the end where you actually get to kill her. But you don't get, there's no repercussions for Michael Douglas' character, really. Like, he's had a bit of a traumatic experience. His daughter's probably going to be in therapy for the rest of her life, but there are no repercussions to his one night stand. He's still got his wife, he's still got his kid, where she's just been shot. So it's kind of it's interesting in that way, how they had to manage what ending they were going to use. Because like he's still a bad guy for cheating. Like you're not thinking about that by the time the film ends. He's a bad guy for cheating. So it's always like more comforting for you as a viewer to know, like, yeah, you can make a mistake and still come out like relatively unscathed, a bit traumatized, but still relatively unscathed compared to the other person who was involved in the affair. Matt, have you got any thoughts on where they took the ending?
I think 100% the film did better by having an ending that, like, afterwards you're not, all right, I'm not that traumatized. Like, I'm definitely never going to cheat on anyone, but like, at least I can sleep now. I think if they used like the same reason they used the ending for Get Out, rather than having him go to prison, it doesn't feel good as a film. So it's not something you're necessarily going to come back to if your main character, even though he's our protagonist, he's not a nice guy. But the wife is the only innocent person. Did you say she kills herself in the alternate ending? Yeah.
No. Just Glenn Close kills herself. The wife, yeah. The wife is the one who she finds the tape that Glenn Close sent to Michael Douglas, like basically saying, "I'm going to kill myself." She's going to use that tape to send it to the police to get him off.
Okay. That's null and void at my point. Anyway, but yeah, it's it just wouldn't be as a fulfilling ending, I think. And I don't think in any way it's trying to like trivialize his actions, but it does look like, oh, yeah, he made a mistake, but she was the crazy one. She's the one who took it too far. So that's an interesting message there, to say the least. But no, I wouldn't change the ending back. I think they went with the right ending. Just in terms of trying to make a film that people will like and actually it will do well, rather than like you want to unsettle your audience enough so they remember the film and they feel something, but not so much they're like horrified and don't want to watch the film again. So there's a fine balance, like fine line they're walking there.
Ross, at what point would you have realized she's a fucking psycho? I need to get rid of her quickly. Because for me, it was when he brought the dog to the park, and then he did that thing where he pretended to faint, and then she's like, "Yeah, my dad died of a heart attack," which we find out later was actually true. But she actually acts like it's a joke. That she does the most like terrifying laugh. It's like that's the point where it's like, okay, you've got issues. Let me just get out of here. Try and get you out of my life. What point was it for you when you realized, yeah, she's a fucking psycho?
Probably like right near the start, or like when they first started hanging out, where he tries to like leave in the morning after like it's like they're like second night together or something, and she just goes like mad at him. He's like, what the fuck? Probably even at that point you'd be like, right, I'm out of here. But yeah, I think what is cool as well, it kind of just like builds up to this ending, because it does have just points throughout the film, including obviously like the bunny boiler stuff and whatnot. That could be a different point for everyone. But yeah, I think a lot of guys would have realized this woman's a bit crazy just after this. She goes crazy when he tries to leave in the morning. She like rips his shirt and stuff, doesn't he? But yeah, but I mean, Glenn Close's really great performance in this film, and she plays the crazy really well. So she obviously has some. She's obviously had some experience. But no, yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. But what I do like about the film, I think a lot of films when you get like characters like flirting and interacting like at the start, it can be really cringy. But this one's written in a way where it's kind of not. It's actually written quite well. And what I noticed as well, when he goes to her house, everything there's like white, like her bed sheets, her walls, all the ornaments and stuff, they're all white, like she's in like a mental home or a hospital or something. And yeah, I really like that.
Glenn Close as well still hasn't won an Oscar. Nominated 7 times. Thought she was going to win for The Wife a couple of years ago before Olivia Colman came in. Say that again?
Should the one for Cruella de Vil.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else? Okay, let's get our ratings. Start with Matty.
I gave it an 8.2.
Mason.
I think because there's like a lack of development, I gave it a 7.9.
Ross.
Yeah, it's the same with me. The lack of development just kind of brings the film down a bit, so I gave it a 7.5.
And I'll give it a 7.7. Okay, final film, because we're only doing 3 films now, if you didn't notice. Eyes Wide Shut, Ross's pick from 1999. A New York City doctor embarks on a harrowing night-long odyssey of sexual and moral discovery after his wife reveals a painful secret to him. Directed by Stanley Kubrick, who co-wrote the screenplay with Frederick Raphael, starring Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, Todd Field, and Sidney Pollack. Jocelyn Poop's score was nominated for a Golden Globe. Other than that, no Oscar nominations. Ross, why'd you pick this film?
So I've seen a few Stanley Kubrick films before, and I've always wanted to watch like more of his stuff. So I just took this opportunity to pick Eyes Wide Shut, and I heard good things about the film anyway. And I just like watching Tom Cruise in films because he's always fantastic in pretty much anything he does. And this role is probably one of his more unique roles. So you have to wait a while for them, like after they go to the party, for them to actually like kind of anything to happen. And this kind of scene where Nicole Kidman just goes like crazy and just starts an argument for no reason, which she does really well, by the way. Really nails how women like to do that. But well, she's doing it on purpose though, to kind of get him to open up about his fantasies, like because she's telling her dreams and stuff, and she's just trying to get him to open up. And that kind of sets up nicely for the film for Tom Cruise to go on this like sexual adventure pretty much. It's very slow paced compared to the other films. It's probably less of a thriller than any of the other films, but I think the dialogue and the writing in the film drives it. Although it can drag a little too much in some places. It doesn't drag too much to like get you disinterested. But I think the weirdness and like the unknowingness of everything in the film kind of keeps you intrigued about what's going on. That ending, as well, I had to rewatch a few times just so I could kind of understand what it meant, but I think I got it in the end. It's basically the film's just like a long-winded way of Tom Cruise opening up about his like sexual fantasies and growing as a person. I think that's highlighted quite well when Nicole Kidman tells him that they're awake now because they've both been through like a journey and like gone through experiences, whether it be real or fake, which she also says. But I mean, I was expecting this film to kind of be black or white, because when you watch a Kubrick film, it never is. He always kind of puts it very grey, if that makes sense. But he's a master of what he does, and although it can feel dragged out, it works because the dialogue is so good. But what I really like about the film as well, it's got really cool like soundtrack in it, and then, like especially throughout the end, there's like this like eerie piano tune kind of going about, like even if he's just like when he's like walking through the streets being followed and stuff. Really cool.
Yeah, this is my favorite Kubrick film, my sixth favorite film of all time. I don't think it's his best film. He declared it his best film because there's still a lot of kind of mystery surrounding whether this was his final cut. Like allegedly, he submitted his final cut, and then he died 6 days later. But there's some suggestion from certain people that this isn't the studio interfered a bit, and this is not necessarily everything that he did. So we'll kind of never know what happened there. But still take it as an outright Kubrick film, and it's kind of split. Why I love it so much is kind of split into actually like the technical like stuff within the film, the thematic stuff within the film, and then all the real life stuff happening around it, which makes this such a fascinating like text for me in terms of actually what the film is about, what's going on within the film. Like Ross said as well, like it's not really a thriller, and to be honest, it's not really erotic. Like Tom Cruise literally spends the whole film trying to have sex and never actually having sex, so it's barely erotic as well. It's a bit bit of a sticky one, but there's always like I watched this Christmas morning. So I was going to watch it Christmas Eve, got into Christmas morning. It was like 1 a.m. Like 1 a.m. I was expecting just to fall asleep. It's like 2 hours, 40 minutes. I was expecting to fall asleep and not actually finish the film. Ended up just being absolutely gripped by it. Just the hypnotic way this kind of entrances you. It's constructed like a dream. Ross mentioned that piano score, which is so simplistic but so effective. Just the different keys on the piano. Like, it's just so well done. And everything about it just feels like a dream. Like even having... Like it's obviously meant to be filmed in New York. He didn't film it in New York. It's in Elstree or Bournemouth. And he managed to make it look like New York. But at the same time, the streets are fucking empty. Like, if the streets are ever going to be empty in New York, that just adds to like the weird atmosphere within the film. And kind of in terms of what it's actually about, it's like Tom Cruise is like completely like kind of overcome by his wife's ability to desire, because he thinks, oh no, only men have these kind of like fantasies and want to sleep with all the women that they can, kind of thing. And she reveals to him, no, women also have these wild fantasies and dreams of getting with other men and everything like that. So he ends up going on a night where he's kind of in like a crisis of his own masculinity, and even to an extent a crisis within his own relationship, because like the power's kind of shifted between them at this point. Because now, no, she has the ability to desire. I thought it was just me. I thought I was always in control within this relationship, this partnership. And it's just interesting, like I said, like he doesn't actually get to have sex. Like we don't see her actually having sex in terms of within the film. It's just a fantasy, but you do still get the like the dream that she's having. Like it's him imagining her having sex with the naval officer, and that's like a recurring thing throughout the film. So you actually see her engaging in some kind of sexual act, whereas he's constantly frustrated, constantly stifled as he goes on this journey throughout the night. And I like how it goes from her being like a pure object of desire in that first scene, like in the dinner party and all that stuff, where you have that weird like Hungarian guy, he's kind of leering at her, and then you have that one scene with in the mirror where Tom Cruise is like over there about to have sex, and she's just like looking at herself, not entirely satisfied, because she doesn't really have any agency in that moment. She's just being desired by other men without actually being able to desire herself. And like that final line, which is just perfect. The thing about the final line as well, I knew, like, it was so strange. I knew it was coming. I'd never seen the film, but I knew exactly what she was going to say. Like as she's going on this little thing, which is like, yeah, that's the one thing that we need to do. Like in my head, I was like, fuck, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. For some reason, I knew exactly what she's going to say. It was just really funny. It was a bit surreal as I was watching it for the first time. And it's interesting, like, he's talking about, like, yeah, we need to, we can make our relationship work, and yeah, we need to have a better connection now. Oh, isn't this great? And she's just like, nah, yeah, bruv, we need to just fuck. Yeah, the tables have turned, the power has switched. She's a woman. She's got all these sexual desires. He's not about it. He hasn't been able to do anything. He hasn't been able to get any whilst he's been on this journey throughout the night. So yeah, and also like the class elements within the film. Like, he always has this like condescending way of like introducing himself. It's like, I'm a doctor in it. I'm a doctor. You can trust me. No matter wherever he goes, wherever environment he's in, it's like a badge of trust for him and a badge of like importance. It's like, yeah, I'm a doctor. And then even the way he when he goes into Domino's house, I think she's the first the prostitute. He's like, oh, this is cozy because it's a bit messy. It's obviously much smaller than his luxury apartment. It's like, yeah, oh, this is cozy. And I think as well, the cunty way that he rips the money when he first goes to the Eyes Wide Shut party, the way he rips the cab driver's money. It's like, yeah, you could, if you hang out here for the rest of the night, you'll get the other half of this. Such a cunty way to flaunt your wealth. But even Tom Cruise, like, even he serves someone higher up in like the class system, because he only gets invited to Sidney Pollack. His name's Ziegler. Only gets invited to his party at the start because he says he does house calls. That's the only reason he's getting invited. He's still serving someone else. He's higher up in his hierarchy. And then even Ziegler's got someone above him because he's got the people who run these like weird Eyes Wide Shut parties, and he's got to serve them as well. But saying all that I've said, it's still kind of a happy ending, really. They're in a more honest place. Like, it's been a bit distressing, a bit upsetting. They've had to bring about some home truths, but they're probably in a more honest place in their marriage. Mason, would you agree their marriage is going to be stronger for this experience?
Yeah, I feel like because like the way Nicole Kidman carries the character, and especially like you said with the ending, you do believe that because of the journey he's gone on, and she makes that comment where she says like she can dream it, but he's like gone out and done it or something like that. She honestly does seem almost content with the outcome of the film, and yeah, although like you said, although he tries for this entire film to try and like cheat and have his own experience, I think the most is that he lipses that girl in front of her dead dad. And I think that's literally like all that he does, like throughout the end. Is it? I feel like it is. I feel like that's the only thing that he does. But that's what I'm saying. Like, other than that, he doesn't actually do. Like, he doesn't actually cheat. He doesn't do anything. And yet, like you said, when it comes like in regards to their marriage, it seems like they have kind of more of an understanding of each other. And there's almost like like you said, when you begin the film, she has this big reveal that when they were planning their future together, she's like, I was looking at another guy and I was thinking like what I could do with him instead of you, basically. And then, like you said, the whole film is about him kind of coming to terms with that idea and building upon that for himself. And you do feel like by the end, they're both on this sort of level playing field now, to where they can progress and go forward and, like you said, like fuck, basically. So yeah, I think it works well for their marriage. I think it was a good couple of days for him to sort himself out.
Matty, like me, you watched this in the early hours of the morning. Did you have a similarly hypnotic experience like I had?
I genuinely wish someone had been filming me while I was watching it, because I literally, for 2.5 hours, I just had my mouth wide open. I was just so bamboozled by what was happening. Like, it was such a weird film. And not that I didn't understand what was going on, because I thought I still understood, but I was still just like, why? Like, what is happening? Because it's like the cult or whatever it is, like the upper class kind of like sex party, whatever it is, isn't even the main aspect of the film. That just happens in the background, and you kind of get too caught up with the mystery of what's going on with this to remember the film is really about the marriage and how they work through the problems that they're having. And then I still like kind of want some answers from the cult, but you kind of understand that it's not really about the answers. But then you still, I don't know, I'm still back and forward, like, but you kind of like, I feel like the answers won't be that satisfying anyway. And I'm pretty sure they did kill that girl, didn't they? They're just saying they didn't. And then probably the music piano guy, he's definitely dead as well. So that's kind of like, there are other things that are like, well, like, yeah, great, your marriage is great, but people are getting killed. Like, is someone going to go to the police or something? But then maybe it's beyond them. So it's great. Yeah, the marriage is brilliant. I think even the second note I've got written down is I hate that damn piano, because I just the score of just that single key just being hit over, and it works really well to just kind of like scare the crap out of me in the early hours of the morning. And also I've got one note written that says, "Damn, that's horny," and this is by far the horniest film I've ever seen in my life. Literally every scene is just loaded, especially like with it being Tom Cruise as well. Like it's just literally it's just heavy with it, and he must have had like the fattest blue balls he's ever had at the end of a film, because like he just literally doesn't do anything. Like you said, I think he kisses, well, that one woman, the daughter of the dead guy, kisses him, and then he lipses the prostitute but then leaves afterwards, and that's literally all he does in the entire film. So it's more like the reverse Sausage Party, because when it gets to the point when he says it's time to fuck, then the film ends, because Stanley Kubrick knows how to do it, and he's no Seth Rogen when it comes to making films. So good for Stanley Kubrick. You can see why he does what he does, and it works beautifully. And the other thing I want to say about this film is the dialogue is like superb. Like the argument they have while they're both high about the dreams, and about the relationship and about jealousy, that's probably some of the best writing in a romance I've probably heard in ages, because it's such a realistic argument that's kind of like Tom Cruise is balancing on the line of almost getting really annoyed by what she's saying to the point she's being rude, but then knowing he still has to take her seriously, and that she might actually have a point, she's just not putting it across in a way, like as Ross said, like she's almost trying to antagonize him just to get him to open up. Like she needs to open up about things she knows he should get annoyed about, and then when he doesn't, you're kind of left, like when he goes for a walk at night, you kind of understand he's still trying to figure out everything she's saying and how he should feel about these things. And I feel like he might have been high for most of the film as well, because it's just like the stuff that's happening is kind of like off the walls. And then the other thing, the dude who owns the fancy dress shop, is he like prostituting out his daughter? Is that implied? Because that's strange as well. Like the two Asian men. The film is just loaded full of just weird, lordy lord. Yeah, nah, it's definitely an experience. It's a good film. I can see why people like it, and maybe I probably will watch it again just to try and understand some of the crap that's happening. Maybe watch a few Watch Mojo videos about it, but we'll see. I rated it highly. And then Tom Cruise as an actor, I think he did really well. I wouldn't say it's his best film, and there are parts when his acting's like less than what I've expected from him, but still, as a whole, it works beautifully.
I watched a trailer to this film, and it was marketed like a proper erotic film, and which I don't know if that was like the studio or Kubrick saying to deliberately mislead the public, or whether they just fucked up and didn't really understand what was going on in the film, because it's completely misleading watching that trailer. And it seems like as well it was kind of sold on that orgy scene, which looking now compared to what you've seen in the last like 20 years, it's not actually that deep. Like it's strange, but it's not that deep really. Like, they've all got masks on. It's peculiar, but it's not extremely graphic. But in terms of just that whole build up to him getting into that, like, I don't know, you call it a club or cult or whatever, and they all have the masks and the music's playing. It's like, and then he walks in. Don't know why he doesn't stand with someone. He kind of makes it bait that he's not part of this crowd, because he kind of stands to the side. And it looks up to those two people. And but the way that started is just really, really ominous. Ross, did you find that whole build up to him getting into the cult thing with the password, all those details, and then him having to leave when you realize he might be in danger? Do you find that all effective?
Yeah, it works really well. I mean, Tom, it's weird as well, because you can't. I feel like this film doesn't really have a genre. Like, it's not really a thriller. It's not really even erotic. It's not really like a drama. It's just like a dream. I don't really know how to describe the whole thing. And I think that's why it works so well, because it's just so like odd, and you're basically going on a journey with Tom Cruise. And I think because he doesn't have any idea what the fuck is going on, you don't have any idea what the fuck is going on. And so when Tom Cruise is in this situation and it's built up to this like mansion orgy, and he's just kind of walking around like so out of his depth, you feel out of your depth like with him, and you're like, what the actual fuck is going on? And I think having all of that build up to this bit, it pays off so well. And then it kind of like the film like switches after that scene to just like him trying to avoid danger pretty much. And yeah, it comes across so well. And I think to credit Tom Cruise's acting as well, because he portrays the character so well, just being so out of his depth and being unable to kind of like get his head around like everything that's happened. After like it's like his character in the build up is like the big man, I'm the doctor. Then afterwards, he's just so like out of it, and he's not the doctor anymore. He's scared, and like he goes to his friend's house, goes to his mate's house at the party he went to at the start, and he's just like, what? Like he has no idea, and the film switches, and I really enjoyed that.
So that's what I like about what's actually in the film. Then everything surrounding the film is also just crazy. Like, so it took 400 days to shoot this film, which is a record. 15 months they were over here altogether. Cruise and Kidman basically sold their lives to Kubrick for that whole period. And this is the height of Cruise's star power. He's basically the biggest star in the world at this point. In 96, he does Jerry Maguire, does Mission Impossible, nominated for his second Oscar that time. And then Mission Impossible like launches like one of the biggest franchises on Earth now. And he decides, so he doesn't have a movie that comes out between 96 and 99 because he just signs his life over to Kubrick. And obviously him and Kidman are married as well at this point. And this basically kind of accelerated the demise of their relationship, other factors as well. But having this experience kind of accelerated that. Like you have, when she films the scenes with the naval officer, where he's like ravishing her basically, they filmed that for 6 days, just that little bit that keeps coming up. They filmed that for 6 days. Kubrick was like, no, Cruise, you can't come on set. It's just me, Kidman, and this guy. So he's like, no, you can't come on set. Basically being a dick, which is pretty funny. And then you have him making Cruise do like going through a door. He'd make him do it 95 times. Just a simple thing like going through a door to just completely drain him, just mentally destroy him, get rid of all the enthusiasm and energy that you usually get for Tom Cruise performance, which is why his performance comes off a bit weird sometimes. And you can almost think it's bad at certain points because he's just broken. But that's literally what Kubrick was going for. And he did 95 fucking takes of him going through a door in order to get that. And in the end, it works. It's also part of just feeling like a dream, having Tom Cruise behaving this way, unlike he's done in any other film. And probably the other weirdest Cruise performance is in Magnolia, which also comes out in 99. And having those like 400 days to shoot this as well, he kept having to push back Mission Impossible 2. They wanted to start doing Mission Impossible 2 for like a year or something. And the studio constantly asking him, like, when are you going to be finished? He's like, I don't know, man. Kubrick doesn't know. He's got no schedule. He just does whatever he fucking wants. So he's having to push back Mission Impossible 2 continuously to film this film. So just all the stuff surrounding it just adds to the kind of experience for me and the fascination I have with this film, as well as obviously Kubrick dying. As I said, we don't know whether this was officially his final cut, and he never got to see kind of the reception to it, having said himself that he thought it was his best film. But Mason, did you know any of that stuff? Any of that stuff surrounding the making of the film, and does it interest you in any way?
No, I knew none of it like before, like you just said it and stuff. But I think it does add to the film, like you said, because I was kind of watching Tom Cruise's performance, and I was like, I really can't tell if this is good or just it just seems really disconnected. Like it didn't really work. I felt like it almost didn't work, but like you said, it clearly does because it makes him this character. And like you said, if you're walking through a door fucking nearly 100 times, you're going to be drained. Like what it's going to force you to give such a different acting experience than what you normally would. And yeah, like you said, it's really interesting the style of filming it in that way. Like taking a year and a bit to film it, like it's very mad. And like you said, if you're at the height of your career to dedicate such time to just one film, it's quite fascinating. I didn't really think the film had that much like going on in the background, but I guess it makes you like appreciate the film even more, and also just find it that bit more fucked up, really, I guess.
Okay, get our ratings. Start with Ross.
A quality film. The writing is absolute top class in this film. I gave it an 8.7.
Matty.
I originally gave an 8.1, but hearing you guys dissect it so much, I feel like yeah, I'll give it an 8.4.
Mason.
Yeah, I'm the same as Matty. I really enjoyed it, but I think after like hearing you lot discuss it, it kind of bumps it up a bit more. I gave it an 8.3.
I'll give it an 8.6. Okay, in terms of our average ratings, first week with just 3 films. So in at number 1 with an 8.5 is Eyes Wide Shut. 2, The Handmaiden with 8.2. And 3, Fatal Attraction with an 7.8. In terms of where they fit in to the overall rankings, Eyes Wide Shut into the top 10 at number 9. Handmaiden 22. Fatal Attraction at 43 out of the 55 films that we've done so far. Okay, moving on to Actor of the Week. Start with Mason.
I went for Nicole Kidman in Eyes Wide Shut. I thought she'd done a really good job. And I haven't really seen that many films that she's in. So the last film I've seen her in was Bombshell. And other than that, I haven't really seen her in much else. So yeah, it was really good to see her in this. And I think she had a lot more sort of like scope and depth. And yeah, I thought she gave a really good performance.
Ross.
I went for Kim Min Hee, who plays like Lady Hideko. Yeah, I definitely butchered that. In The Handmaiden. I think she plays both sides of like the backstabbing and like the badness so well. And like no matter what part of like the past or what side of the kind of twists it is, you kind of you believe her performance, and I think she pulls it off really well.
Matty.
I went for Glenn Close just because she's got like Joffrey level ability to make you hate her. So I think any actor that can do that is worthy of Best Actor.
Yeah, I also went for Glenn Close for the physicality and the energy at the start, and then the way she like devolves into the psycho as she becomes in the film. So yeah, very two sides, very good performance. This week's unique category: the scene you'd least like your parents to walk in on. May.
I went for Eyes Wide Shut with the circle booby scene, just because I feel like that'd be the hardest one to explain. Because it's not even like just like straight up sex. It's just, they're just having it's like culty as well, and I feel like my parents have problems with cults as well as sex.
Ross.
So I was thinking about the Eyes Wide Shut, like the mansion orgy scene, but then I was like, actually, nah. At least it kind of looks like a film. Like the end of the Handmaids on the boat, it pretty much just looks like softcore porn. Like there's not even much point in the scene being there because the film just ends after it. So like if you're just watching that and it just ends, like and your parents walking on that, it's gonna think you're pretty much just watching porn. You're like, how do you explain that? Like, oh, it's the end of a film. It's like, what kind of film have you been watching? Like, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know about it being softcore porn. She's got metal balls up her vag. Like, come on.
I've seen harder.
Fair enough.
Mason.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like the one that I wouldn't be able to explain the most, and it probably is the end of The Handmaiden, because even though I saw that cult shit in Eyes Wide Shut, I was like, after my mum's like, yeah, I've seen it. I was like, yeah, fair. So you're not going to be like, what the fuck are you watching? So I was like, okay, it's got to be The Handmaiden, because I think she'd just walk in and be like, what the fuck are you watching? Especially I was in a different language as well. She's like, no, yeah, she'd be lost. So yeah, I think it'd have to be the same scene as Ross.
Yeah, I think as well that having The Handmaiden in a different language just adds to the potential weirdness of it if you were just to stumble in. So I went for the first sex scene in The Handmaiden, where it's like the simultaneous oral sex, basically. Like there's be a very sticky one, like in a different language. They push it to the point where it's almost funny because it just goes on for so long. And having a different language kind of adds to it. Like you got Fatal Attraction. Both people have seen Fatal Attraction. If you haven't seen it, you're like, oh, that's Glenn Close. Eyes Wide Shut, like you can't see any of their faces in that orgy scene, but like it's the mask. Like everyone kind of knows Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, like the biggest couple in the world at that point. Everyone's kind of aware of that scene and the phenomenon that it was. I think The Handmaiden has to be in there. Yeah, I wish this was a Pop Vinyl Award. Ross.
I thought it was quite an easy one this week. I went for Tom Cruise in like his cape and mask during Eyes Wide Shut. It just looks really cool. I think also Tom Cruise is cool, so let's have Tom Cruise Pop Vinyl.
Yeah, it's got to be something with the mask. The mask's iconic. Yeah, I can't believe there's no Top Cruise pop vinyl. Like, there's nothing for Top Gun, no like Mission Impossible, maybe even like Jay Maguire. There's literally nothing. So yeah, they need to sort it out. Okay, we're done for this week. Follow me at LeonWayne98, Corona Cinema Podcast.wordpress.com, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean. Next week, we're doing the Before trilogy, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. Until then, bye.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Mason, is that plant in the background? Is that from IKEA? Is that real?
Nice fake. Is that real? Nice fake.
I have a fake one from IKEA.
Oh no, mine's not from IKEA. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
look, it looks the same.
Oh, it looks the same. I have a real one, but it's dying.
Oh, all the rest of my plants are real. I have loads in my window.
Flex. One's actually so hard to look after. It's actually so long.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure half of them are dead, but calm.